Podcast17, broadcasting from deep within Combine territory. It is every citizen's duty to resist the Combine and learn the truth.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Podcast17, your weekly verbal tour of everything Half-Life. I'm Phillip from Planetphillip, and with me today I have William, Thomas and Alistair. Gentlemen, introduce yourselves, please.
Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of Podcast17. This is William, of course, and we got an interesting show for you, so stay tuned. We got a lot of news to cover, so get your news hats on, so to speak.
Hi, my name's Alistair. I'm also known as Deds, spelled D3ADS. I am the creator of the mod Forgotten, which we will be talking about in a few minutes. And I've also been in the Half-Life community for about 10 years and counting, so it's been a long time.
Yeah, and I'm Thomas from Half-Life Creations, not really a stranger here anymore, and I'll be glad to be offering my opinions on what we'll be covering on the show today.
As long as there's no more terrible Phillip impressions, that's fine. Welcome, everybody. So, to start with, let's talk about some Podcast 17 news. First of all, to tell you there will be no interruption in transmissions over the Christmas period. We'll be carrying straight on. We're not going to take a break, and hopefully you won't be as well. Also, just to remind you about the listeners' questions, we haven't received any this week, so we can't play any. I'm sure there are hundreds, if not thousands, of listeners out there who have a question and maybe are a little bit shy to record it, but please don't be shy, record it, and the guests will answer the questions to the best of their abilities. And lastly is the playing event, which William will tell you about. William.
Of course, last week we talked about our playing event, which was Suicide Survival. For those unfamiliar with the event, we have a Steam community group up. It's called Podcast17, of course, so you join the Steam community group, and you just play with friends, and last week it was Suicide Survival. And I think on the Monday or the Tuesday, I can't remember which, I set up a little server, and a couple people joined. It was quite interesting. I met a couple people, a lot of the listeners joined, I met a couple of listeners through this gaming event, and we had a lot of fun. We played it for about half an hour, nothing big, and we got to know each other. So this week we will be having the playing event again, and later on in the show we'll discuss which mod we're going to be playing. But I would just like to say we're going to have an event Wednesday night, and I'll post a news section on the Podcast17 website at www.podcast17.com, but we're going to shoot for about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and like I said, I'll mention which mod we're going to be playing, and that is going to be our playing event for this week. Of course, you don't have to play Wednesday night. You can always just join the group and find people online and message them and say, hey, you want to play this mod? You want to play the mod in the playing event this week? And I almost guarantee people will say sure. That's kind of how it was last week, and I hope that's how it is this week. So just letting you all know, the community group is up there. It's Podcast17. Check it out and play with some friends.
Okay, cool. I missed that. I have to admit that I thought we were going to have a specific date, so I wasn't looking out for it. If I'd have thought about it, I would have probably joined in and let myself get exploded or blown up at least. So sorry I missed that, but I'll try and be around for the next one.
So I think that covers podcast news. Did you want to move into Half-Life news, Phillip?
Yep, now seems the perfect time. Tell us what's been happening this week, William.
Alright, so on the vein of things, we mentioned Suicide Survival earlier on in the show, and of course we've been talking about it a lot in the past couple of weeks, and we promised that Tobias was going to be releasing 1.1 on Friday, and of course he did. Suicide Survival 1.1 is out. It includes a whole bunch of new maps. He had a little mapping contest to see which of the best will be included in 1.1. He has a new scoring system, a new third-person view for the Suiciders, which was extremely needed. A lot of people were saying they wanted a third-person view. Awesome new taunts, some new voice icons placed over the head so you can have fun verbally abusing each other, and new team colors. So 1.1 is out. It is a much-needed update. Check it out and have some fun blowing each other up.
That sounds so strange. That have some fun blowing each other up.
Well, that's what the mod's all about. Alistair, did you get a chance to play Suicide Survival yet?
No, because I don't have Half-Life 2 installed, actually.
Oh, fair enough.
The reason I was laughing because, have fun blowing each other up. It made it sound like we were all walking around and we were all deflatable, or inflatable, as it were.
Moving right along. Empires released a new version of their mod. Now, I never really have been a fan of Empires, but I want to give it another shot because apparently it's come a long way since their initial release. And that's why this week, Empires will be our playing mod of the week. So download Empires 2.2 and get it installed so we can play with some friends. And like I said, I haven't played Empires in a while, but it's kind of like a real-time strategy first-person shooter. It kind of streams alongside of mods like Natural Selection and other RTS mods. But I want to give it another try, and they've added a whole bunch of new things which sound a little bit interesting. So if you're willing to play Empires, like I said, join the Steam community group, and we'll be having a little event on Wednesday. Has anybody been following Empires? Thomas? Because I know Phillip and Alistair. Phillip and Alistair don't play multiplayer mods.
To be honest, I'm in the same boat as you are with it. I saw it, and I'm like, well, it looks interesting, but it's not really my bag. It's not something I don't think I would enjoy too much. So, on the risk of probably disliking it, I've just not played it at all.
Yeah, also when it was first released, it was so laggy. I mean, you would have more than 8 people in a server, and it would just become ridiculous. Because the amount of models and the amount of things happening behind the scenes. It is a pretty intricate game. It is a little bit advanced as well, so there is a little bit of a learning curve, but we can work through it this week. I think this will be a good mod to pick, because it's team play oriented. It's extremely team play oriented. And maybe we can all just go in a server and be on the same team, like the Podcast17 Empires team. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem to be my kind of game either. It looks quite impressive. It's like sort of Operation Flashpoint meets Battlezone. It's quite intriguing.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it too, I think.
So, William, how long do you think it would take for a bozo like me to sort of pick this kind of game up, since I've never played anything like it before?
Well, judging by how the game was at the very beginning, there is a huge learning curve. A bigger learning curve than most Half-Life games, so I think it might take you a couple tries to get used to. But if you have people helping you out through voice chat, it's a little bit easier. Games like this are always hard to figure out on your own, unless maybe you go through a README. But when you have other people on your team, and people on your team who are nice and helpful, it goes a lot smoother. So I think it'll be alright if we help you out.
Okay, I mean, that's a good point. Mods like this should sort of have introduction nights and introduce a newbie and all those kind of things for people like me, because otherwise making that jump is, quite difficult on your own, as you say.
A lot of mods nowadays don't have tutorials either. Like the multiplayer mods, they don't have a sort of training area that you can go in by yourself. And I think that's lacking.
Yeah, I remember I tried a game called PlanetSide. I think it was a Sony game, and it was huge. It was a 1.6 gigabyte download, and it gave you the impression that it was, really easy to play. So I got in there, and I couldn't figure out what to do. I picked up a weapon, and I couldn't even get out of the base. I couldn't join a team. I was just stuck there for like 10 minutes, and in the end I thought, forget this. I've got better things to do with my 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, you see tutorials for games, for single-player games, and obviously the AAA titles always have tutorials. But I think mods, they really don't care about that sort of thing. They leave it up for the player to learn by themselves. I think that's where they lose a lot of their player base, is when a new person comes into the game and they get overwhelmed by the amount of features involved. I think it might be nice to have, for mod developers, to concentrate on an offline, slow-paced tutorial so people can pick up all the controls and everything, instead of them learning by themselves through trial and error, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. And this comes back to what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago about mod management, that it's not just enough to actually make a mod. You have to promote it. You have to make sure that people understand what it's about so that they become interested and they know how to use it and all sorts of things. And this is just one area that is neglected by many, many mods. I mean, in fact, I can't think of a mod that has done a really, really good job of explaining things. But having said that, all of the mods that I play are single player. So perhaps the other people, the guests, Alistair and Thomas, can think of some mods that have done a really good job of, explaining things to their players. Or not. Okay, no problem. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm like, you guys might be on to something there. I'm trying to think. I'm racking my brain as hard as I can, and I think a lot of mod developers, and I'll put myself guilty as this as well, assume that, hey, if you're playing a mod, you should know how to look up the controls, and you should know to do this. They're putting a lot of stuff back onto the player simply because they believe that, well, mods aren't exactly mainstream, although they are becoming mainstream, but I think developers are lagging on that, so they don't think that it's an issue.
Yeah, that's another really good point. There's a lot of assumed knowledge because of the elitist mentality of the community, right?
Yeah, I mean, Half-Life do a fantastic... Sorry, Half-Life. Valve do a fantastic job of, when they gave you the gravity gun or the 0-point manipulator, whatever it was called, they had the area with the dog and you had a chance to play around, and it was so well done. And if you weren't paying attention, you could have missed that it was a tutorial within the game.
Yeah, little things like that are perfect for titles to do. Not specifically like a tutorial, like a training room like Half-Life 1 did, but like you said, like built-in tutorials are always fun. Right off the top of my head, though, most recently, Half-Life Zombie Edition kind of did a tutorial at the beginning of their game. There's a lot to learn there, and they taught you how to change from one zombie to another and about all the controls, but that was just through, like, interface, text messages, and everything. And once again, that was built in right into the game.
That's true, you're right, and it was quite well done. I mean, it should have had a system where you could replay it quite easily, because I missed some of the text messages because, I don't know, the doorbell went and I looked around the corner or something. But you're right, Zombie Edition had that, and that was an excellent thing.
Yeah. Anyway, moving right along, this is probably my favorite part of news this week, just because of how professional it is. This morning, NeoTokyo released their trailer for the mod they're going to be releasing fairly soon, and this trailer is so professionally done. Philip, you wanted to say a little bit something about professional trailers?
Yeah, after watching this trailer and the Black Mesa trailer recently, I think it's time that we acknowledged how professional the videos that mods are releasing are becoming, and hopefully that's because the whole process is becoming more professional, and also hopefully it's because they're passing it over to specialists. I mean, within a mod you have a specialist mapper, specialist modeler, voice actor, and slowly I think we're now getting professional video makers, because it's very, very good, and it makes a huge difference to the impact that it has on a potential player, and I think that's really important. So whoever made that and the Black Mesa trailer, well done, and hopefully other mods will learn from that, and if they can't do it themselves, try and find somebody.
Yeah. Alistair, Thomas, what did you think of the trailer? I think it was incredible.
Yeah, it was very impressive. As I was saying earlier, it does remind me of Shogo Mobile Armor Division and, a lot of the other sort of anime things. It's very impressive. It does come across to me like a retail game. Same as Black Mesa. The quality of trailers these days is it's mesmerizing, just how much stuff they can do for, a third-party modification.
No, it certainly looks pretty good. My only fear with these higher-end trailers is I don't want to get the wrong idea of what the gameplay will actually be like. It can sometimes mislead people. Like, Left 4 Dead kind of did that because it looked like it would be a lot different from a Source game, but no, it played very much like a Source game. But I really hope for NeoTokyo and the community that they can somehow shake off the Source cliches, if you will.
Yeah, that's another good point, too. I forget who said it, a couple episodes back, but somebody said, remember, trailers show nothing about gameplay. They just show how pretty a mod is. I think it was Tobias, and I think that's a really good point, and it kind of bleeds into what you were saying.
A good case in point of that is the new Alan Wake trailer. You know, there's a lot of good sort of cinematic stuff there, but it doesn't show any gameplay off, so you're kind of left wondering how the game's actually going to play.
I agree with you too, but I think at the same time the developers have to make sure that they get us interested even before the gameplay, and if that's the aim of these trailers, then they've done a very, very good job. And remember, when you think about cinema, movies, often you see something in a trailer that doesn't end up in the actual movie itself, but if it's enough to say, wow, that's great, I've got to watch that, then it's done its job. And the other side is that the mappers and the coders have to make sure that the gameplay matches the quality that has been presented in the videos.
Yeah, people always say you can't judge a book by its cover, but in media, you always judge books by their covers. Like you said, through movies, even through like poster bills of movies. These trailers are what gets people interested, and it's really all people have. There's very few people out there who are going to the news sites and reading the news sites in depth, and frequently reading the like say NeoTokyo's website. So the trailer is possibly the only thing somebody has before the mod actually comes out. So you are judging a book by its cover, and you have to really concentrate on keeping your fan base like that and getting people interested.
A Planetphillip regular reader, and also somebody we'll be talking about later, named Kasperg, who was the maker of the Citizen and the Citizen 2, he posted on the site that for him, high-quality images are a very good reflection of the quality of the mod that is released. Not that it's impossible to make really good screenshots of a map and then have bad gameplay, but really, if you have a really good quality screenshot that reflects the map, then it shows that the person involved has taken a lot of time and is thinking about details, and probably, although not necessarily, the gameplay will be excellent as well.
Yeah, I think it really shows that people care, and our next little news bit, I know you want to stay on this, but it's on the same topic of trailers. The Kreedz Beta4 trailer was released, and in comparison to the NeoTokyo trailer, this really is nothing. It's like comparing a McDonald's hamburger to a fine dining steak. You know, there's nothing involved here that separates or that distinguishes the Kreedz Beta trailer amongst all the rest, and it shows a level of detail that the designers really care about. You can tell the NeoTokyo team is a professional team. They care about getting their mod out, and they care about everything they release, and like you said, even high-res images. And you can tell, even with high-res images, if people put a little banner, a nice little graphic on the bottom or on the top saying this is NeoTokyo, and maybe print the map name and maybe who worked on this little section, that goes a long way too. It makes your images look a lot more professional.
Yeah, I agree. Just all of those details. I mean, as you were speaking, I was rude enough to be watching the Kreedz trailer again, and really all it is it's just watching somebody play the game, and believe it or not, that actually has the opposite effect on what they expect, because I look at that and think, oh, that looks really hard. I don't think I really want to play that. That doesn't suddenly make me think, wow, that's really interesting, whereas the NeoTokyo one did. And I still won't play it because it's a multiplayer one, but at least they've elicited the type of response that they should be going for, which is interest. Okay, so while we're talking about this NeoTokyo trailer, what interests me most about it is the way that it really takes a completely new style, art direction. And there was a mod that I think was cancelled that had this kind of combination of, you know, manga and something else that I can't quite put my finger on. And it had, I'm sure it had like a dolphin that was augmented. Can anybody remember that? Because that was like a cool looking mod.
Oh, I don't even recall anything like that.
You lost me on Dolphin.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to have to look for this, but this was like some mod that they were working on, and they really did look like they'd gone into the detail, and something about a police, almost think it was Neo Police or something like that. Maybe the listeners can tell us, or I'll probably do some research after the show.
the mystery mod of the week. That'll be our new on-the-fly segment.
That's a great idea. Yeah, we should have that. Name that mod.
So, just to summarize, the Kreedz Beta4 trailer was released. You can check it out if you're a Kreedz fan, and I think trailers like this exist in comparison to the NeoTokyo trailer is to inform, right? The NeoTokyo trailer is to get interest of people, but the Beta 4 trailer is to inform the already established player base of what's out there and what's coming in Beta 4. So you can see that the trailer is, as Phillip said, just a video of somebody playing the mod, and then written over top is their new additions and like 30 new bug fixes, and now the grappling hook works well and ping is better, things like that. It's more of an informative trailer rather than a visual trailer.
Yeah, and at the same time, that information could have just as easily been put into a news post, but they decided to put it in the trailer, so whether or not that's a good strategy, we'll see how it works out for them.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I've just found the mods. Sorry, it was actually a mod for Unreal Tournament. It's called Union City Blue, and that had a cool art direction. So we'll link to that, even though it's not Half-Life. We'll link to that.
Alrighty. Okay, moving right along in the agenda here. Phillip, you recently posted Appeltart on Planetphillip. You want to talk about this mod a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I'm a little bit late. It was released sometime in July, so I'm one of the last to sort of post it. It attempts to tell you a new story, and it attempts to make some modifications to the visual style, and more importantly, it attempts to introduce humour, and unfortunately it didn't do any of those for me. I found the whole thing quite boring, and the attempts at humour just fell flat for me. The mapping style was very plain and simple, and the idea of an Appeltart, I like serious mods, to be honest. I like mods that follow the Half-Life story. I know I'm very special, but that's the way I am, and I applaud them for trying to do something new. And I think when you look at their forums, most people thought that they'd done a great job, but the gore was quite excessive, and I don't find that particularly interesting. And instead of a crowbar, you had a frying pan, which is okay, it's cool. I mean, Kreedz uses an ice pick, so it's nice to have something different. But one of the problems I found with this mod is that you can throw the frying pan, but then you can throw it where you can't reach it, which is quite annoying. It had achievements, which was kind of quite good. So, all in all, I suppose what I'm trying to say is boring.
You know what? I kind of liked it. Yes, the mapping style was horrible, absolutely horrible, and they need to work on their visuals. But I'm one for that type of humor. I mean, it's kind of like a 4chan/YTM&D, if anybody knows what that is, humor involved in the mod. Just complete nonsense is what it is. But what I really liked is the amount of detail they put into, as you said, the gore system. The blood system and the camera sprays are awesome. And I don't know if you remember, but the water, when you went into the water, that was absolutely amazing. I've never seen anything like that in any mod. And I think they should make this open source and make it available to every mod, and every mod should use their water system because it's that amazing.
Yes, I have to say that, and really I was only joking when I said the boring part. I just didn't like it as much as other people did, but I agree with you completely. I thought the water system was fantastic, and yes, let me reiterate, if you can, please make that open source and let other mods use it, because it's fantastic.
Another great thing, though, was this mod was very mission-based, and it had a nice little UI where you'd start a new map and you'd ask yourself, what's going on here? What's the story? And you just kind of hit tab and you read your missions, and you're like, okay, I have to go to this locker. It doesn't matter why you have to go to this locker, you just do. It's just, there's something that's driving you, but it's nothing really interesting that's driving you. And then you get achievements based on that. So if you do a certain amount of things in the map, like Phillip said, you unlock the ability to, say, throw your frying pan, and you're working towards these things throughout the maps, and the maps have really nothing to do with each other. They're just kind of mission-based areas, and then when you beat one, it loads the next map. They are continuous, but I see no overall storyline. It's just a mod that makes completely no sense, and that's exactly what they're going for. They weren't trying to make a mod that made sense. So if these things kind of deter you, then don't play it. But if you are kind of somebody who likes to look at everything Half-Life, you need to at least check out the gore and the water system in this mod, because it will astound you.
I have to disagree with you a little here, William. I don't think that they were actually trying for this like random idea. I think that this is one of the problems of having a community with a lack of direction. I actually feel that they made this mod, it was almost like a group of guys sitting around a table and saying, okay, what should we do now? Oh, well, okay, we could have an Appeltart. Okay, yeah, and a frying pan. Yeah, great idea. And then we could have a couple of maps to do this and a couple of objectives. Okay, yeah, let's do that. Rather than somebody saying, this is what we really want and let's make the best of it. That was the impression I got, anyway.
You forgot to mention that they were also high and drunk when they thought of this mod.
Yes, that too. Anyway, as William says, if you want to play something Half-Life and you're looking for something different, then you should definitely play it, but it's not going to be on your Christmas wish list for the best mods of the year, at least not on mine anyway.
Yeah, not on mine either, but oh man, they should really open source some of their effects. It's really amazing. Anyway, moving right along, one of my favorite mods of all time, and hardcore listeners should know, SvenCoop has released a huge media update. Sven Viking is kind of known for, holding out on media updates and just releasing a whole bunch of stuff at once, either because A, he's lazy, or B, he just kind of lets things pile up. He's not really in charge of the mod. This is where a lot of people get confused with the SvenCoop mod. Sven Viking is no longer in charge of the mod. He's in charge of kind of PR, but that's about it. He has handed the mod development over to Sniper. So when Sven Viking makes a news post about the SvenCoop 4.0 features, it's usually a big deal. So I'm just trying to give you guys the background involved with this. So he posted a whole bunch of images and a whole bunch of screenshots of all the new maps and all the new models that they're releasing in SvenCoop 4.0. And it's going to be awesome. It's going to redefine SvenCoop, I think. And one thing that should really get SvenCoop fans interested is that Sven Viking said, anybody who wants to donate, now is your last chance. And the reason this is so important, in my opinion, is because the way they do their donations is if you donate, you get something special in the game. And they put your Steam ID in the DLLs of the game. So he's saying this is your last chance to get your Steam ID in the DLLs, which means they're packaging up their DLLs right now. It means they're done. So 4.0, in my opinion, will be out really, really soon, which is great. I can't wait till 4.0 is out. So check out the media images, check out the weapons and the maps, and get your SvenCoop on.
William, tell me why I should play this this mod, and tell the listeners who haven't played it, why should we play it?
Because SvenCoop, if you're a single-player fan, let me just tell you right now, single-player is much better when you're playing it with friends. I know that's kind of an oxymoron, but SvenCoop does the best job in any co-op game I've ever played in my life. I've played a lot of co-op games because co-op is my favorite genre of any type of video game, and playing with friends and the SvenCoop community is such a good group of friends. It is so fun. It might look like crap to some people out there, but the idea is you can play these maps a million times and they never get old because you're playing with different people each time. And for some reason there's just something in the SvenCoop, whether it's magic or whether it's, as I like to sometimes acknowledge it as, divine intervention, that sets this mod apart from every other mod known to man. And they are releasing They Hunger to SvenCoop 4.0, so if you've never played They Hunger, it would be a good time to play it, maybe with friends through SvenCoop. And encouraging mods, like Half-Life mods, to stay in development is important for all Half-Life fans to do. SvenCoop is one of the biggest Half-Life mods out there, and by you playing it means that you still care about Half-Life, and it encourages the developers of SvenCoop and mappers too to keep on the topic of Half-Life instead of moving on to Source. That's my little rant.
I admit when I first played Sven Co-op, it had some really diabolical looking maps back in the day. It's come a long way and it is looking really superb, especially with Thy Hunger Co-op, and the actual 4.0 edition is also looking superb. It looks so much different compared to what it did in the first incarnation when it first came out. It's really, it's really grown and developed as the time's gone by. It's looking really impressive.
Yeah, and the beauty with the mod is that they don't really have a team. I mean, they have a team, yes, Sniper runs a team. They have a couple mappers who are involved, but it's the community. The community works on this mod now. It's gone through so many iterations of development cycles that now it's gotten to the point where, alright, you have a cool map? Cool, we'll put it in 4.0. You got a cool model? You got a nice high-res model? Okay, cool, we'll put it in 4.0. Their idea is, let's try to make 4.0 as community-friendly as possible, and how better to do that than let the community work on it. And it's not like a haphazard, somebody works on one thing, then somebody works on something completely different, and you have no consistency throughout the mod. It's something that the community has, all has consistency. The community itself has a sense of consistency. So in that, they develop a mod that just works so well. And like you said, it's been around forever, so they have the kind of veteran feel to it, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like anyone can contribute to it. You make a nice map and you say to them, yeah, that looks good, we'll put it in there, and that's why it's one of the most popular mods, because anyone can contribute to it, as long as if you've got something that's gonna enhance what's there.
Here's another thing that might drive you, Phillip. There are 2 Sven Co-op map packs, and they're called the Big Map Packs. And I think each of these map packs are about 1 gig each, and there's easily over 4,000 Sven Co-op maps out there, like just random things. And if they're crap, they're still fun to play. As weird as it sounds, if they're a box and they have like a head crab in it, they're still fun to play. For some reason, this game can make any map enjoyable.
Yeah, but it still suffers from the fact that you have to play it with somebody, and that's just so difficult for me.
I think you have to try it or see it to believe it, so to speak. When 4.0 is released, we'll pick it for the Steam or for the community game, and you'll be forced to play it.
Okay, fair enough.
Alright, moving right along. I think that's enough Sven Co-op. Strider Mountain has released some media, and we've talked to the Strider Mountain people on the show before. I just wanted to mention it. So their media looks really, really nice. They always release really nice shots. Philip, did you take a look?
Yes, I did. I was actually the first to publish it, but I didn't really put it on the front page, so sorry to the Strider Mountain team. So I got the media before anybody else, and it's beautiful. I mean, it does what it's supposed to do, which is excites people, and people are desperate to play this mod. And the next item on the list is talking about another mod called Eternal Silence coming to Steam, and I was just thinking, I wonder if Strider Mountain have thought about trying to get it on SteamWorks. If not, then perhaps they should think about that, because I'm sure that they're going to get hundreds of thousands of downloads, but at the same time it might make life a lot easier for people. Having said that, again, I don't know how much work it would take to put it on SteamWorks, so it might be too much work at this late stage, but it looks beautiful.
Is Valve accepting single-player SteamWorks mods? I can't say whether or not...
I don't know, to be honest, but it would seem a little unfair if they weren't, but that's something we can talk about another time. But I was always under the impression that SteamWorks was never supposed to be for mods. They made that very clear in the publicity, and then suddenly they started using it. So if they can do it for MP mods, why not for SP?
Yeah, of course. It's just, Valve decides in the end, right? I just wonder if they have some sort of bias towards multiplayer mods. That's all I mean.
Yeah, maybe they do, maybe because it helps them with publicity or promotion or something, because people are playing it constantly and it's always played through Steam. I don't know. I have no idea.
Talking about SteamWorks, as Philip mentioned, Eternal Silence 3.2 is coming to SteamWorks, and this is a mod I haven't played in a while either. They released some new media. It's kind of like a hybrid between a space shooter and then an FPS. You control these spaceships, as far as I can remember. Has anybody played this recently? I'm looking at you again, Thomas.
Boring.
You don't like it?
No, I do not. I remember I didn't review this for Planet Half-Life. It was actually John Phillips that reviewed it, but it was hard to get a game going so much that I got messaged on MSN, and he said, "Tom, I need you to do me a huge favor." And I'm like, "What's that?" Like, "I need you to come play this mod with me." I'm like, all right, so I downloaded it. And we were going around shooting things, and it was like, okay, this is sort of fun, but when they say eternal silence, it was like I'm sitting here at my desktop clicking buttons. It was pretty silent.
So tell us a little bit what the mod is, though, for people who don't know.
Yeah, for sure. What it's based off of is that, two warring factions, red and blue. I don't really care what the backstory is, never do. And there is these massive space battles going on. So you'll have all the blue guys on one side of this endless space void and all the red guys on the other side of the endless space void. And there's ships shooting at each other, and your objectives is to blow up all the enemy ships. And of course there's one mother ship that's more important than the rest, but that's essentially the idea. And there's different ships you can fly that have different abilities, like your fighters, your bombers, your attack bombers, and all that stuff. And if you're really good, you can even land in the enemy hangar, and that's where the first-person combat comes in. You can run around and blow up the place from the inside out. And that was probably the only part that I really enjoyed, was sneaking into the enemy ships and just, picking off the pilots as they were trying to get towards their vehicles until they left the game out of pure frustration. But, it's good, but I'm sure there's people out there that would enjoy it a lot more than I would.
Takes a certain gamer, is what you're saying.
Very much so. It's very in line with Empires for me.
Right. Alright, so I think that covers Eternal Silence. We gotta keep going down this list. No Shelter HDR. Phillip, you posted this on Planetphillip, and even I got a chance to play this. Tell us what this is about.
Yeah, this is just a little map that Mapper's made and just sort of released. It's a very short map where basically you've got a rocket launcher and you've got a couple of aerial enemies to shoot down, and you just have a little bit of fun. I played for maybe 10 minutes. There's not supposed to be a story. There's a few combined soldiers. It really doesn't try to be anything that it's not, and it's quite good fun to play. I'm a little disappointed with the title, No Shelter, because there's plenty of shelter, but it was fun. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I had a good time. Like you said, there's nothing really special about it, and there's nothing really bad about it either. But do not play it on hard. It takes an infinite amount of rockets to kill something on hard, and it's not fun. I eventually, playing it on hard, I eventually stopped playing. I got to like the second ship, or the second attack craft, the one in episode 2, I can't remember what it's called, but not the chopper, the other thing. And I couldn't take it down. Like I must have shot like 50 rockets at this thing, and it was just eventually a repetitive function of me running from one shelter to the other, picking up rockets on the way, and then shooting, and then doing it again. It eventually got boring.
Yeah, I only played on easy, and I think I recommended to my readers to try it on hard, because I thought, well, it was quite easy on easy, so maybe it'll be more fun on hard. So if you have, based on my recommendation, sorry about that.
Yeah, it makes it almost near to impossible, put it that way. Alright, talking about trailers again, moving on. Operation Black Mesa released a trailer. This looks like a pretty cool mod. It reminds me of a sort of Opposing Force remake. I think that's what they're trying to do. Yeah, they are. They're trying to recreate Half-Life Opposing Force in Source. It's just interesting to look at because we've been talking about Black Mesa Source a lot, and there's nobody really caring about Opposing Force. And the trailer looks pretty cool. They have some really, really nice things involved here. The trailer's a little bit boring because they got a lot of text, but their maps look nice and their weapons look nice, and it looks like they're really caring about Opposing Force. Opposing Force is one of my favorite mods for Half-Life 1, so if you're interested, check it out.
Yeah, but it's not really a mod, is it? I mean, Opposing Force is like a whole game in itself, so it's a little unfair to label it just as a mod. I mean, I really like the night vision. I thought that was a really good idea, and I was hoping that somebody would build some mods where you only had to have night vision, because I thought that added something extra. That was kind of cool.
Well, yeah, the last mod we played that we were able to beta test, why can't I think of the name now? It's kind of embarrassing.
Combined Destiny 2.
Combine Destiny 2, they had some really good night vision in there too, so that was interesting to see. But anyway, check it out if you're an Opposing Force fan. If this mod isn't on your radar, it probably should be, so check it out. Another thing that I want to talk about is Ragnorak Arena Remastered. Now, we had A-Card on the show, and he's the one in charge of Ragnorak Arena, and he mentioned he was going to be releasing a new mod for Source, and then NoPK, Emmanuel, quickly said that that's no longer in production. So I think what he's doing is he's concentrating on Ragnorak Arena Remastered Source media, and he's been releasing a ton of media for Ragnorak Remastered, and it looks pretty good. Ragnorak Arena wasn't really one of the mods that I enjoyed. I don't really like the whole platformer for Half-Life, but it's interesting to look at if you've played it. Thomas, do you have anything to say about Ragnorak?
Quite a bit. I'm probably one of the few people that's actively beta testing it now. And having played the original Ragnorak Arena on Half-Life and then playing the Source version, he's done so many improvements. Like, he's been working his absolute butt off getting this done and polished, and it really, really, really shows. It's just, I really think that it'll make a much larger impact than his previous works, and I really hope that it does, because he's very talented at what he does, and he spits out new builds for me all the time to download and play, so he is very much in development to this, and it shows through the constant media releases.
Yeah, it looks nice.
Sorry, I was going to say that I think the idea of a multiplayer 2D is a really cool idea. I've never ever heard of that before. Maybe there's hundreds of them, but I just think that's a really cool idea, and maybe that would be fun to have as a Podcast 17 playing event one day as well. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, Ragnorak was fun. I just couldn't get into it, and I do look forward to Source. I really want to play it. So it will be one of our playing events when it's released. Excuse me. But anyway, moving right along. Anyway, check out, like we're saying, check out Ragnorak Arena if you haven't been checking out the new Source stuff. Moving on, though, NovaFall is a Half-Life third-person map that was just released on the Interlopers forum. Phillip, you found this. You want to talk about what this is?
Well, I can't say that I found it. Somebody emailed me and pointed me in the right direction. But I wasn't. When I was emailed, I didn't realise it was a third person until I saw the screenshots. I loaded it and I played it, and it was very interesting. I mean, I don't like third persons very much. Sorry, Alistair. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I did have a problem with it, and what happened was when I died and I reloaded, the configuration file somehow hadn't been taken up, and all the button assignments had gone, the binds, and I couldn't play, and I was never fast enough to get out of the way of the what's that thing called, the antlion guard, so I died, so I didn't carry on with it for too much time. But I think it's great that people try new things. I mean, I presume you've played it, yes?
Actually, I didn't get a chance to play this, but it looked interesting. It reminded me of like games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill that had those fixed camera, third-person type of things. It's pretty. Sorry, it's a pretty simple concept too. I mean, you just set up like an ENV camera or whatever they're called, a function camera, and it's always triggered, and then you just control your player. I'm surprised nobody's done this sooner, to be honest.
Yeah, I think he got a little bit of flack for the angle of the camera, though, that sometimes it was quite difficult to see, and you weren't always in the right place, and it would have to change, and you could be behind a wall, and I had a little bit of trouble with it sometimes as well. But I suppose people who are used to third-person shooters are sort of know how to move their character so that doesn't happen to them.
I can't really see how this would work in sort of like a Half-Life 2 environment, because the whole point of the camera angles in Silent Hill games and mainly the Silent Hill games is to create a sense of unease, because there are things that you can't quite see because the camera restricts you, and that puts a sense of fear because you're constantly wondering what it is that's in the corner that you can just about see but you can't quite see it completely. So I can't really see how that would work in Half-Life 2 sort of environment, but as I've not played it, I can't really comment too much, so it might be something that I could check out and sort of see actually how we've achieved that.
I'm not sure that the author was going for a scary atmosphere ambience anyway, though, so I understand what you're saying, but maybe he was just looking to test the limits of the Source engine or see what it would be like. But it's nice to just try something new, that's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
Okay then, moving on. The Citizen 2 released some media. You posted this on Planetphillip too. Tell us about this.
Yeah, I got another exclusive here a few days before any other website, so I was very lucky, so thanks guys for that. The Citizen 2 is one of a few eagerly anticipated mods. It carries on the story from The Citizen, and if you haven't played it, that's a must play. That's definitely a Hall of Fame 2007 for Planetphillip. So they released some screenshots, and there's been some debate on Planetphillip about a particular cathedral and whether we feel it's out of place or not, but besides that sort of minor detail, it looks like it's going to be a really good mod. And the authors, Kasperg and Playbus, or Evil Bill, I'm not sure which he prefers now, sorry, are really trying to introduce new textures, new sounds, new models, and they're working with a very competent modeler, who I'm not sure I can mention yet, who's been mentioned on this show before. And it's very clear to me that they don't want to just use the same textures and sounds that everybody's been using for Half-Life 2 for a number of years now. They want something different, and this mod looks like it's going to give us that. And it has an interesting story, which is always nice. I think there will be some moral dilemmas, which I really, really like as well. So if you haven't played Citizen, you must. If you haven't heard of Citizen 2, then you must check out the new media, because it looks great.
Yeah, these few screenshots do look really, really nice. Really clear art direction and like what they want in terms of maps and environments.
Yeah, it looks really impressive. I love the trams. It's just excellent.
I'm enjoying that I see less and less default source textures, and that means it will hopefully feel less like a source mod, and I'll want to play it more.
Yeah, that's the problem I have with source mods, is they kind of tend to use a lot of the stock material, which kind of fits in fine for Half-Life 2, but when you move away from something else like that, it doesn't actually work. But with this, it's nice to have, you know, a mix of Half-Life 2 sort of default stuff and new things to sort of, you know, freshen out the, you know, the atmosphere and everything.
Well, it's still set in the Half-Life universe, and so it's nice to have some connection. I think if they replaced every sound, every model, and every texture, it would be too much of a jump. But it is nice to have new stuff. There's no doubt about that.
Oh yes, of course. I was just talking about, you know, source mods in general that tend to use a lot of stock material, that's all.
That's a good segue for the next thing we've got to talk about, and this is a mod that does not use any stock material. This is ridiculous. Now, I just want to say right off the bat, I am not really a Star Trek fan, and I'm definitely not a Star Trek like Enterprise fan, but Star Trek Enterprise Temporal Cold War is a mod that's definitely on my radar. If you haven't seen this, their ModDB profile page and their subsequent trailer that they just recently released of what we're talking about, then you need to look at it right now, because this changes everything about Half-Life, and they are doing things that I didn't even think were possible in this game. It's intense, the amount of things they're doing with this mod. It is nothing like Source. It is nothing like anything you've ever seen. No mod is comparable to this mod alone. And it's totally something you would not expect from a Star Trek mod. And I cannot wait for this thing to be released. And it needs to be on everybody's radar. If you haven't seen this, look at it right now. Click the link right now. Pause this podcast and look at the video and look at all the images.
Yeah, it's absolutely superb. They are really taking their time and they're doing a great job. And the new video has excellent voice acting. It took me a while to realise that it wasn't the voice from the TV show, because whoever's doing the voice acting has done a great job to make himself sound very similar to Captain Archer. Enterprise is my favourite Star Trek series. I'm not really a big Trekkie, but I do like watching them. But I think this is going to rock. This mod is going to rock.
What do you guys think of this media?
It just totally blows me away what they've done. Wow. Everything looks great. Like nothing looks out of place, in the sense that it looks very, very believable to me. There's not really any one thing I can point out in a screenshot like, oh, that doesn't look right, or oh, I remember seeing that cup somewhere else, or I remember seeing that chair somewhere else. They've pretty much thrown everything out and started from scratch, and that must be a hell of a lot of work, but the product that they're getting out of it, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much what Thomas just said. I'm absolutely bowled over by the amount of detail that they managed to put into this. All the custom content it's amazing. There's a large group of talented individuals here indeed. It is wow. I'm not a Star Trek fan myself, but you know, I'm certainly interested in this just for the sheer amount of custom content that they've managed to, you know, make. It's fantastic.
I think this will make a Star Trek fan out of anybody.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to using the phasers and everything. And while we're talking about this mod, I have to tell everybody that we will have 3 members of the team from Temporal Cold War on the show within the next couple of weeks. So we'll be having an exclusive interview with these guys, and gals, in fact.
Woot woot. Oh, the first girl on the show.
I never watched Enterprise before, so I don't know. What's it about? To be in relation to the others. I love the Borg. If the Borg made an appearance in this would sell me, because although I'm not a fan of Star Trek, I do love, you know, the film First Contact and the Borg in general, because they just creep me out. They're just horrible.
I can't remember whether the Borg make an appearance in this. I don't think that they do, but the mod follows the first or the 5th series of the whole show itself. So if you've seen the show, you'll sort of know what's coming, but you'll be playing it as well. And it's good to see that they're designing this as a single and a multiplayer, so hopefully there'll be lots of maps. And we talked about this before, when they finally release, hopefully they'll release some of the assets for people then to make their own maps, which would be kind of cool.
Yep, something for everyone indeed.
Yeah, this mod is intense. I can't get over it, really, to be honest.
It doesn't really look like a Source mod. It looks like something from a next-gen game, to be honest with you.
Even the models, like the player models, are superb. The likeness to the actual characters is incredible. I was going to say, these developers are going somewhere in the future. I can guarantee it. They will definitely be part of some sort of AAA title.
Yeah, I don't want to be the person to... Yeah, maybe... I don't want to be the person to jinx this in any way, but I'm very curious how Paramount are viewing this. I mean, this mod isn't like a quiet mod. I mean, they've been releasing media for a long time. They've got a lot of publicity, so I'm almost assuming that Paramount have either turned a blind eye or almost officially sanctioned them, because it's just too good for them not to know about, and hopefully that won't get in the way. I can't believe that they've got this far, and just hope that things are going to carry on. I'm sure that they've got some plan of action. Does anybody know whether that they've had discussions with Paramount or what?
Ooh, I think that'd be a great question for the interview. But we're well aware of other mods going downhill because of some copyright infringements like GoldenEye Source. That's the most notable.
I say they'd have to be fools to close this down, because it would just be a waste. I mean, words fail me at just how amazing it really is.
Yeah, and what does Paramount gain from shutting this down? Like, it's just one of those things that, they would only do for legal reasons.
Yeah, it's the same with Fox. They're really touchy about that sort of thing, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and I think it actually backfires on them as well. I mean, I think that, you're better off just letting people almost do what you want, and if your game, or if you're a company who's planning to release a game, is not as good as a mod, well, that's a reflection on you, not the mod itself. It's a reflection on how good the mod is, and perhaps how bad your game is.
Right.
I think Fox is starting to sort of slow down a bit though, because there's a mod for Crysis, which is a Predator mod, and as far as I know, Fox haven't said anything to them about it, so I don't really know what's going on there. I think they're starting to sort of accept people, there are fans about that are making mods, and why not?
So anyway, we will be interviewing them, so stay tuned to Podcast17 in the future for more of Star Trek Temporal Cold War. Moving on, our last bit of news is Fragout, and this is a mod that we've been following. Duck Sauce has always been sending us updates on this mod, and we're happy to announce media updates for him. He released a couple new images of the maps, and of course a video, the first gameplay video of Fragout. You can see all the different weapons that they have in this game and all the new models and everything, and it has a nice little drum and bass soundtrack. Does anybody else have anything to say about Fragout? It looks interesting. I like grenade mods.
Sorry, I was just watching the video and I couldn't hear anything that anybody was saying there. Yeah, I'd have a go. I mean, it looks kind of fun, you know, as long as there's lots of variety and, you know, it's fun. I mean, I said this before, that just because I don't play MP mods, it's not because I'm against them in principle, just because I haven't found any that I like yet. But this one looks kind of cool. I really like the idea of that.
For sure.
So, William, is there a beta out? Has it been released? Honestly, I'm not really sure what the situation is at the moment with it.
With Fragout, no, nothing has been released yet. They're just releasing media, and this, like I said, this is the first trailer. I think they're doing beta testing internally right now. I'm not sure if they're recruiting beta testers at the moment. I don't think they are, so don't quote me on that though. And they're just still fleshing out the details of the mod. Like even in this media update, they announced a new kind of deathmatch mode called Melon Death mode, and there's about 30 seconds of round time left. And Melon Death mode is activated. It's like sudden death, but with a twist. Players get 1 HP, and their grenades are removed and replaced with a whole bunch of melons. So they're still fleshing out the details of the mod, and I don't think it's out yet, so, but don't quote me on that yet.
Okay, maybe I'll send him an email and see if I can get a beta version and play around with it. I mean, that might be kind of fun for us to give our thoughts on a beta version, so we'll see.
Yeah, for sure, that'd be cool. Okay, so, due to popular demand, we have brought back the Blast from the Past segment, and we meant to talk about this mod on a previous Blast from the Past segment, but we had to skip it, and this week we are going to be talking about it, and it is one of my favorite mods, and one of my most nostalgic, called USS Darkstar. And I just want to say real quick before we talk about what USS Darkstar is. When I first played this mod, I don't know when it was released. 1999. So, a year after Half-Life. Almost 4 days before my birthday, actually. When I got into this mod, when I bought a copy of like PC Gamer or something, and I still didn't know much about Half-Life mods at this point, and in the actual magazine, there was a CD on there, and packaged on that CD was Neil Mank's USS Darkstar. And I put that in my computer, and I played this mod, and I loved it. And then this mod alone is what got me into third-party modifications for Half-Life. That's why it's such a big impression on my life.
Yeah, absolutely. This has an impression on my life as well. I looked at it and I thought to myself, wow, it would be brilliant if I could actually make that myself, and from there on I set out to try and learn how to mod. This also has another memory for me because I had a friend, we'll call him Bob. He used to have a pirated version of Half-Life, and he used to just play it single player. He looked at USS Darkstar on the internet and he thought to himself, yeah, it would be pretty cool to play that. So he installed it, and then he found, because, you know, it's not a legitimate copy, he couldn't play it. So what he did was he downloaded a patch and installed it, and then unfortunately he found he couldn't play it. So what he had to do was go out and buy the legitimate copy, and that's how Bob learned that, you know, piracy is a bad thing.
Is Bob a pseudonym for you?
No, Bob's this person I knew back in the day. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know Bob as well, actually. I know Bob, yes.
Bob's cool. I used to play cards with Bob all the time. Great guy.
Yeah, I lost a lot of money on poker with Bob, but that's a completely another story. I played US Darkstar this morning, and I had a lot of fun. I mean, you could almost use this as a masterclass for mapping. I mean, at the beginning, he uses the voice of the NPCs really well. He sets the story really well. There's the scenes at the beginning that sort of show you where you are, and lots of exploring with lots of windows to see where you can get to later on. And then once the game starts, you've got a few puzzles to work out. There's new models. I mean, it's fantastic. Unfortunately for me, it crashed on my Steam installation 4 times at the part where you are in the area with the gravityless section. Do you remember that, William? But that's where it crashed for me, and it crashed so many times I stopped this morning.
Yeah, I remember it crashing a lot for me too when I revisited it on Steam. It's kind of to expect when you have a mod like this from 1999. If you haven't played Darkstar, though, I suggest you do. And another reason why this is so big is because Neil Mank, of course, the creator of the They Hunger series, has been in the mapping development, been in mapping since Quake 1, since the early days of Quake 1. So when Half-Life was released, the idea was he already had that background into making beautiful looking maps, and he already had the concept down, and the technology down in terms of his head. He just had to pick up Valve Editor and go ahead and edit, or Worldcraft at the time, and he did so. And nobody knew at this time really how to make Half-Life mods. Nobody knew anything. So by Neil Mank and Black Widow Games releasing something like this so soon after the release of Half-Life 1 was, mind-boggling. And, it might... I might be going out on a limb here, but this mod might have been the reason Half-Life mod development has flourished throughout the years, because Neil Mank and USS Darkstar showed how easy it was to create a mod in Half-Life, and showed how wonderful the Open SDK was, or not the Open SDK, but all the tools that Valve makes available.
Does anybody know exactly when he released this? I'm not really sure. Planetphillip tells me it was released on the 1st of January 1998, but that's just a default date I have for when I don't know something.
You have it at May 26, 1999.
Yes, no, you're right. I'm just checking again. And is that the correct date? So that's really only 5 months after the release of the game.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at Neil Mank's website, and he says it was also in the PC Gamers, which is the PC Gamer that I picked up when I was a kid. PC Gamers August 1999 issue.
You beat me to it.
That's very impressive considering how little time he had to work on something, even with lots of experience. Yeah, I mean, this really was a very important mod for people at the time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I played this mod on loop because there was nothing else to play at the time. I mean, you could either play this or TFC or replay Half-Life 1. That's really all that was available at that time. And it made a big impact on a lot of people's lives, I think.
That site is certainly a nostalgia blast. We've got links to the Forge and lots of other different sites around at the time. 3DML and 10.4, blimey, it's like being back in 1999 again.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at Neil Mank's site too. Even before Planet Half-Life was around, I think I saw the old Planet Half-Life banner. What was it called? No, I can't remember what it was called. Maybe Thomas knows.
I don't like to remember that banner. No.
I remember Prefab Land. God, that's going back a bit as well.
Oh yeah, I released tons of stuff for Prefab Land. If you can find that site, look up Cubic Virtuoso and you'll find me and all my releases on Prefab Land.
I probably got some of your stuff on a hard drive somewhere as well.
It's just this nostalgia that USS Darkstar brings back to us, and this is why you should be playing. You, the listener, should be playing this mod. And all I can remember, all that's ringing in my head right now, is the lines "Damn that monkey."
Makes me feel younger as well.
By the time you listen to this will be on the front page of Planetphillip, so there won't be any trouble finding it. You'll just need to go to the front page, and it'll be there.
Right. Alright, so that's the blast from the past, and that's definitely a blast from my past. I think it's time for an interview. Alright, so as we said, Alistair's on the show, and he's from The Forgotten. Alistair, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what your mod is about?
Sure. Basically, The Forgotten is kind of a third-person shooter, but it's not a third-person shooter. It's sort of like, if you sort of weigh it up, if you've played The Suffering and you've played Silent Hill, if you go in between those two, it's sort of like that sort of action. It's a third-person sort of game, which plays very much influenced by Silent Hill, Resident Evil, sort of influenced by films like Hellraiser and Jacob's Ladder, and it's also got Vietnam bits in it as well, so it's like Platoon and the other big Vietnam films like Apocalypse Now and Full Metal Jacket. It's basically the story of a private detective called Jack Dawson. He's travelling to the town of Pinewood Creek to find this girl who's missing because he's had distraught parents on the phone, or should I say parent and father, who's asking him to find out what's happened to her, because she's gone out on a school trip to the town of Pinewood Creek to Camp Diamond Lake, which is taken off from Camp Crystal Lake from Friday the 13th there. That's where the slasher influence ends, though, don't worry. And basically he travels to the town, and his job is to look for her, and along the way he meets lots of unscrupulous characters, like without giving away too much, there's a sheriff of the town, there's a girl who's sort of, she's a bit mental, she's not quite there, she's quite a deep character, so I'm not going to go into too much. He meets a girl who's searching for her missing fiancé, who was last seen at Pinewood Creek because he's a photographer, and he went by the lakeside to take some photography for his company, basically. And it's really about sort of Jack's journey through Pinewood Creek to find the girl, because he's sort of searching for a chance at redemption. Another thing that's happened is he's been diagnosed with lung cancer, because during his days as a Vietnam vet, he did a lot of smoking, and he's done that over the years, and it's sort of mounted up over the time. So he's got that to deal with. I mean, he's in his sort of early 50s, and is wandering around this place, and he finds that things aren't quite right, in the sort of traditional vein of horror, and he has to find out what's happened and try and sort it out, basically. So that's sort of like what The Forgotten is in a nutshell. I could go into it a lot more, and I will do indeed, but that's sort of like the summary, really.
That sounds definitely exciting. Sorry. One thing that you've mentioned is your influences. Clearly, there's influences from Silent Hill and other horror-based AAA titles. But what about other Half-Life mods? I'm directly referring to mods like Cry Fear and Afraid of Monsters. Are you looking to mods like this to get some ideas of, maps and your art style, so to speak?
Yes and no. I played Afraid of Monsters back in the day when it first came out, and I was like, this is really good. This is sort of a Silent Hill mod, but it's not Silent Hill. It's something new and refreshing, and it was really impressive. When Afraid of Monsters Director's Cut came out, it sort of influenced me to sort of follow that vein of a horror mod. I'd already started work on The Forgotten and Other Guys, which was set in a sort of city like New York with special forces, but the problem with that is it wasn't scary, because at the end of the day, it's like First Encounter Assault Recon. You sort of a guy, a badass who's got all these weapons, and he's fighting monsters, and it's hard to be scared, because you're armed with all these weapons, and you can pretty much kick ass as much as you want. And so I dumped that idea, and I went with the sort of traditional third-person sort of journey through a town and to other locations, really. So that was pretty much where it came from. I mean, so I've got to admit, Afraid of Monsters Director's Cut did quite influence me to go that way, but in a different direction, obviously. So in terms of other Half-Life mods, The Forgotten was around a little bit before Cry of Fear, so I had no idea about Cry of Fear. But certainly, some of the features of Cry of Fear will probably make an appearance in The Forgotten as well.
Okay, so I have a few questions. Why third person? What was it about third person that made you decide that this would be suitable for what you're trying to do?
Because I know how much you hate third person, Philip. No, really. It was just because third person, it works in Silent Hill because you see the character, you know. In a first person game, sort of like, you know, Half-Life, you've got Gordon Freeman and he never says anything ever. And it's kind of hard to sort of identify with the character because he's just there, but he's got no personality whatsoever. You know, if you've got a third-person game, you know you've got the character who's talking, and you can see him, and he's actually someone who's there. And I like the whole idea of having a third-person game. I mean, it also enables me to create camera angles whereby I don't have to create all of a level. I can sort of create some of it and leave the rest not there because you can't see it. So with the first person, you know, you have to make everything completely there because it's the first person, you can go anywhere. So there's like a mix of third person behind the camera gameplay where you sort of like you're aiming and you're shooting and you're wandering around, and then when you get into some rooms that's sort of like, you know, this top-down camera, sort of like, as I was saying earlier, to create a sense of uneasiness. So that's pretty much why I've gone with the third person, you know, camera mode.
Okay, that's interesting. We won't talk about that today necessarily, but I'm not sure I agree that having a third-person camera angle gives you the ability to explore your character or define your character better than having a first-person view, but we can talk about that another time. But why Gold Source rather than Source then?
I never really got into Source, to be honest with you. I installed Half-Life 2 back in the day when it actually came out, and I thought it was okay. I'm one of the few people who will say that I think Half-Life 2 is overrated. Now we're going to get loads of complaints about that. But no, I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was, you know, that great. And as an engine, you know, it's sort of accessible, but it's not. You know, there's a lot of things that you have to do differently. And, you know, if you want to create custom content, there's a lot of, you know, writing extra sort of code in these files and creating shaders and build cube maps and loads of other things. And it's like, for a mod like this, you know, my aim was to create something, you know, sort of rivaling, you know, Silent Hill 2 and 3 sort of art style details, so maybe even go a bit past that. But, you know, in terms of Source, you know, it's got all the things like, you know, Spectre and normal and HDR and God rays and stuff like that, and I don't really need that sort of thing. So I mean, I went with Gold Source basically because, as I said it very much earlier, I've been in the Half-Life community for over 10 years now, and I know my stuff really with the Half-Life engine. You know, moving on to another engine and trying to learn everything would just be like shooting myself in the foot, because I'll be trying to create a mod, and yeah, I'll be learning as I go along, but I might run into problems and I might not actually be able to pull off the things that I wanted. Whereas with Gold Source, I know where I am because I know the mod, I know the engine rather, sorry, inside out, so I know about all the things that, you know, you have to do on there and that. So, and of course it's a lot less work. I mean, yeah, you've got the engine limitations and you've got the things you've got to, you know, you've got to sort of deal with, but at the end of the day, that's a challenge for me, you know, creating something that's sort of right. I've had comments from people saying that the mod looks kind of Source-ish as it is, so I'm really happy about that. But yeah, it's pretty much, you know, it's an old engine and I want to get the most out of it, and as I'm a Half-Life veteran, that's pretty much why I wanted to use Gold Source over Source, to be honest.
Just on that vein, I think there's a lot of people who think the same way you do. Exactly the same way you do. I mean, we've talked about SvenCoop, and they're kind of reluctant to go towards Source, and I think that's important because it keeps the Half-Life industry alive. But at the same time, I think there's a push and, you know, high definition in Gold Source. Afraid of Monsters did it with their high-definition textures, and we're seeing it with other mods like The Mistake. They're concentrating on using a lot of models, and it looks like you're concentrating on using a lot of models too, instead of brush models, which is good because you know, there needs to be some sort of evolution, but not too much as to confusing us or you guys, the developers. So that's really noble, I think, in my opinion. I just wanted to ask, are you working on this alone?
Not really. It started off alone. It started off as a sort of an experiment. I mean, this is in all the 10 years that I've been around, I haven't really released much apart from a couple of Counter-Strike maps that no one will have heard of. CS Renegade and DE Savage. Pretty much no one's heard of those, I suppose, really. That's all I've released. So I thought to myself, you know, I've got to release something for Gold Source. I've got to say, hey, here I am. This is what I can do and that. So that's where I went with The Forgotten. But I kind of thought that, you know, it's going to gain popularity, but it's got a lot more popular than I realised, to be honest. I'm quite chuffed with that. But it's me primarily. I mean, I do the textures, the skins, I do the mapping mostly, I do some of the sound effects, I do the storyline, I do most of the dialogue. It's a lot to take on, but it is actually good because, you know, it means I can branch out and do a lot of different things. So if I get bored of one area, I can go to another section. And for the fact that, you know, you've got the horror elements and you've got the Vietnam sections as well. I can go from the horror to the Vietnam bits if I get fed up of the horror. So, but I'm not the only one working on it. I met a guy at my workplace, of all places, which is a call centre, which is a pretty average place, and he's actually a 3D modeller who was looking to work on something, and just by chance, you know, I met him at work and we started chatting, and I found out that he was actually a really good character modeller, and he's actually been working on some of the characters. He's modelled Jack's model, which is actually undergoing some changes at the moment. Hopefully it's going to be finished soon. He's also modelled very recently Maiden, which is one of the concepts on the ModDB page, the controversial one, no less. Poor guy actually had to re-UV that recently because he edited the UV from what he'd done with the changes I asked him to do, and it didn't work, so because we had loads of smoothing errors and stretching things, so he had to re-UV that all over again, and he hates UVing, and anyone who knows UVs can sort of, you know, sympathise with him there. So he's doing the character modelling, and he also does some of the props and additional things that I might need that I don't have already. Also, we have Atoli, who's also known as Umner. He's a music producer. He's working on the industrial sort of noise type sort of music that we have. I'm trying not to be too much like Silent Hill there, so we're sort of mixing it up. Had another guy called Delon, who's also working on the music, but he's working on more the instrumental type of music. So he's got some stuff up on his profile on the ModDB page, and I will make sure that I make a post about that on the actual profile so people can see that, and indeed on the forums as well. We have also got a guy called Magnuson who is working on layouts. One of the important things about The Forgotten is because everything, you know, is like Silent Hill, you've got all the maps and everything, and it's sort of integral. You've got to sort of get the aesthetics for the building right, so it's correct in terms of the map. So you've got the map up, and you'll be able to see where you're going, and it'll be real time in the game as well. So he's helping me out with the layouts there as well. And last but by all means not least is James Min Wee, who's also working on Cry of Fear, and is of course the sole original creator of the very popular Resident Evil Cold Blood. He's actually doing the coding. He actually came to me to do the coding because I didn't actually have a coder, because I hadn't actually been seeking one out, and because at the beginning I didn't know whether it was actually going to get that popular that I would actually go that far. You know, it was at the beginning it was just making as much stuff as possible and seeing if it would create some, you know, some popularity. And so yeah, James is working on the mod. He's going to be doing the coding, and also one of the reasons he's doing the coding is because with Cry of Fear, some of the features that they have will also be implemented into The Forgotten. In a different way though. The inventory system in Cry of Fear is fairly small in comparison to what will eventually be in the Forgotten. So pretty much, yeah, that's the people that are working on it. There is also Jack Warrens, who's also part of Heart of Evil Napalm Edition, who's actually very kindly modelling me a completely new Huey at the moment for the Vietnam sections, and it's looking superb. So I cannot wait to skin that. And there are other people that are also helping me out with little things, but they're not actually part of the team itself, as it was.
Well, it certainly seems like you have some sort of real direct drive. You have such an intricate storyline, and you seem to know exactly what you want. And, you're even concentrating on the little things that a lot of people don't concentrate on, like for example, music. As you said before, you have an intricate music team, and music is obviously important to any Half-Life mod. Emmanuel talked about that on previous shows. I just wanted to know, of course, the last question, and what you're probably expecting is, when can people expect to see it?
As 3D Realms would say, when it's done.
Oh, let's not compare you to 3D Realms, because then we're gonna have a Duke Nukem Forever idea on us.
It's actually going to be renamed the Forever, actually, in later times, because it will take forever to complete.
Let's hope not. I've got a question about a description you used on your mod profile here. It says graphic novel sequences. I wonder if you can explain what you mean by that.
Yep, pretty much. Basically, if anyone who's played Max Payne will know that it's one of the few games that's actually implemented graphic novel sequences in the gameplay. So you've got the cutscenes, and you've also got graphic novel sequences to sort of play the storyline along. So this was something that I wanted to do in the Forgotten. I wanted to have cutscenes in there as well, but I also wanted to mix it with graphic novel sequences. So the good thing about graphic novel sequences is it allows for a lot of play around, because what I do, so basically I'll have an environment made in Hammer which will be empty, and then I'll have all the models, the characters that are going to be in the actual graphic novel sequence themselves, posed in Half-Life Model Viewer, photoshopped into the environment, some additional photoshopping for lighting and shadows and stuff like that as well, add the speech bubbles in, and hey presto, you've got the graphic novel sequences there. And these will work pretty much like they do in Max Payne, where, they sort of load and you've got the sound effects and you sort of follow the frames along. Unfortunately, with the limitations that we have, we can't actually have it frame by frame, so you'll just have to follow it along with the sound effects, and then look at the next frame, and then you'll realise that that's where that scene's coming from and everything. So it's pretty idiot proof, so that's going to be okay. And I'm sort of debating whether to have all graphic novels in the whole game itself, or just keep them for the Vietnam sections, because I'm not sure whether they would work too well in the actual game itself. Now that we've had discussions about this, I mean, people have been posting on the ModDB page about concerns that it wouldn't really work in a game like this, and I sort of thought about it, and I'm thinking, yeah, it might not actually, but we've got to try, and we've got to see if it works. So I'll certainly be following it up, but most certainly the graphic novel sequences will appear in the Vietnam section, so you can look back on Jack's history when he was a Vietnam vet, and you will also get to know about some of the things that he did in Vietnam that he's kind of forgotten about, things that he would rather be buried for a long time. So the graphic novel sequences are pretty much something that I wanted to put in the mod that would be original for a Half-Life mod, because it's never been done before. And as far as I know, other than MDK, which is a fairly old game now, and Max Payne, graphic novel sequences haven't been put into another game.
Okay, well that sounds like it's definitely worth looking out for. I'm curious to see what they'll actually look like in the game. So thanks for coming on the show and talking about the mod. For listeners who want to find out more, there's the ModDB profile, but also if you want some access to exclusive media, then you'll need to join the forums, which we'll post a link to. And once you join, you'll have access to some exclusive media. So that's definitely a mod that you should be interested in if you're into that kind of Silent Hill type ambience. So, William, another show. Anything that we can finish up with today?
I think that's about it. I just want to remind the listeners to join our Steam community group. Search Podcast17 on Steam community, join the group, and this week we will be playing Empires 2.2. So you can jump on there and play with friends, play Empires, and if you want, you can probably play the new version of Suicide Survival 2 if you want. I'm sure you'll find people on there who want to play 1.1, especially myself and Nick. And I just want to thank all our guests, of course, Thomas and Alistair, who came on the show again. And I want to thank the listeners for being here. And don't forget to check out Podcast 17, www.podcast17.com. Phillip, anything last to say?
Yes, thank you to the guests, and thank you to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It's been a great privilege, even. I'm really glad to be on here, and I hope that people can see that The Forgotten has a lot of potential. I mean, there'll be a lot of people out there that aren't really into Half-Life they're more into Source mods now, but, if you just want to sort of step away from the sort of Source guys there and have a little look at Forgotten, I think you'll surprise yourself. And look out for the future, because I will be releasing a big media release.
Yeah, it was great to be on again. I really appreciate having the opportunity to come on here and talk with you guys about all these wonderful mods. And yes, for those mods that are out there looking for a place to host their stuff, you can be like Alistair here and be awesome on Half-Life Creations. So be sure to check us out if you want some hosting.
Send in some more listeners' questions. We really want to reply to those. And keep visiting the site and keep telling us what you think. So thanks for listening, and we'll speak to you next week.